The night of my graduation dinner should have been the happiest day of my life. Instead, I stood in the shadows of my own home, clutching a small envelope in my trembling hands, while my parents placed a golden key into my brother's palm. Everyone clapped, cheered, and showered him with love as my father proudly announced, "This key belongs to your brand new car. You deserve every bit of success, son." I forced a smile, but inside, my chest burned. Not a single glance came my way, not a single word of pride for me. I was invisible in my own family. If only they had known what I had been hiding all this time. A truth powerful enough to turn their proud cheers into silence. Sparkles, before I continue, make sure you subscribe to Vital Secrets and stay with me till the end, because when the hidden truth finally came out, it changed everything forever. Growing up, I learned quickly that in my family there were two worlds, one where my brother, Daniel, lived like a king, and one where I, Jessica, barely existed. When Daniel scored an average grade, my parents cheered as if he had solved world hunger. But when I brought home top marks, the response was always the same. "Good, now go help your brother with his homework." On birthdays, he received expensive gadgets, surprise parties, and endless praise. My birthdays? A cake from the store if they remembered it all. Family photos always told the same story, Daniel in the center, surrounded by smiles, while I stood at the edge, cut halfway out of the frame. The injustice did not stop there. My mother often said, "Daniel is the future of this family. You, Jessica, are just ordinary." Each word stung, not because I expected to be treated like royalty, but because I was their child too. All I wanted was a fraction of the love they poured into my brother. Little did they know, the more they ignored me, the stronger I became in silence. I remember lying awake at night, staring at the cracks in the ceiling of my small, dimly lit room. The sounds of laughter from Daniel's side of the house echoed through the walls, the television, the clinking of glasses, the joy that never once included me. The silence of my own space felt heavier than stone. Sometimes, I pressed my pillow to my face just to muffle the sound of my sobs. Not because I was weak, but because I did not want to give them the satisfaction of knowing how badly their neglect hurt me. In the mirror, I often whispered to myself, "Why am I never enough? Why does their love stop at me?" The humiliation reached everywhere. At family gatherings, Daniel was the shining star introduced to every guest. I was the other one, the daughter they barely mentioned. Each smile they gave him was like a shadow that swallowed me whole. And each time they dismissed me, a fire began to grow deeper inside, a silent promise. One day, I will not just be enough. I will be unforgettable. While my family celebrated Daniel's every small achievement, I learned to live in silence, and in that silence, I worked. At 16, I secretly applied for part-time jobs. I stacked shelves at a grocery store, cleaned tables at a cafe, and even tutored younger kids in math. Every coin I earned, I saved. But my true passion was technology. Late at night, when the world slept and my parents thought I was wasting time, I sat in front of a secondhand laptop that I had bought with my own savings. I taught myself coding through free online courses. I read books about business, design, and marketing, often under the faint light of a cheap desk lamp. I built small applications, sold them online, and slowly started earning more than I ever imagined. My parents never noticed. They were too busy showering Daniel with endless attention. There were nights when my eyes burned from exhaustion, but I kept going. Because deep down I knew, success is the best answer to neglect. Every secret hour of work became another brick in the empire I was quietly building. By the time I turned 21, my small side hustle had grown into a company worth more than anything my parents could ever imagine. And yet, I never told them. To them, I was still ordinary Jessica, invisible, unworthy of love. But soon, the truth I carried in silence would not only shock them, it would shatter their perfect illusion forever. The day everything shifted began at a family gathering. My parents had invited nearly every relative we had to celebrate Daniel's new promotion at his job. The living room sparkled with decorations. Plates of expensive food filled the dining table. Laughter rang across the room as relatives raised glasses in Daniel's honor. I sat quietly in the corner, sipping water, trying not to draw attention. Then, as if it were rehearsed, my father cleared his throat and tapped his glass. "Let us raise a toast," he said proudly, "to Daniel, the pride of this family. The one who will carry our name with honor." Cheers erupted. Relatives clapped. My mother added with a smirk, unlike Jessica, who still has nothing to show for herself. "At least Daniel gives us something to be proud of." Their words were loud enough for the entire room to hear. Laughter followed, like sharp knives cutting into me. Daniel leaned back smugly and said, "Jessica should be grateful she even has a roof over her head. Not everyone is cut out for success." A wave of heat rose in my chest. I clenched my fists under the table, my nails digging into my palms. The humiliation was unbearable. I wanted to scream, to tell them everything, but I held it in. Because deep down I knew, their arrogance, their insults, their blindness, it was all pushing me toward the moment I had been waiting for. They thought they were mocking me, but in truth, they were building the perfect stage for my hidden truth to explode into their world. And when that moment arrived, their pride and laughter would turn into silence and regret. The laughter around me grew louder, sharper, almost unbearable. My father raised his glass again and declared, "Daniel will always be our pride. Jessica, on the other hand, will always just be ordinary." The room erupted in laughter once more. Some relatives whispered, others smirked at me with pity. That was it. The line had been crossed. Slowly, I stood up. My chair scraped against the floor, silencing a few voices. All eyes turned toward me, expecting me to sit back down in shame. But instead, I reached into my bag and pulled out a sleek black folder. My heart pounded, but my voice was steady. "You're right," I said softly, locking eyes with my father. "I did not earn your love, nor your praise. But I earned something else." My mother scoffed. "Oh, please, Jessica. Do not embarrass yourself again." Daniel chuckled. "What is it this time? Another bus ticket?" The relatives laughed, but their laughter froze when I placed the first document on the table. The bold company logo at the top was unmistakable, a tech giant every single person in the room knew. Gasps rippled through the crowd. My uncle leaned forward, squinting. "Wait, this is real?" I nodded calmly. "That is just one of many contracts my company has secured." The room fell into stunned silence. Whispers spread like fire. I laid out another paper, then another, proof of deals, numbers, and ownership rights. Finally, I slid the last document across the table. My father snatched it up, his hands trembling as his eyes darted across the page. His face drained of color. "No, this cannot be true," he muttered. My mother leaned over his shoulder, reading aloud without realizing it, "Property deed. Oakwood Estates." Gasps filled the room. That was not just any neighborhood, it was the most luxurious area in town, where many of our relatives lived, including my parents. I folded my arms, my voice calm but sharp. "Yes, the house you live in, the one you always brag about, it does not belong to Y." My father's face turned crimson. His proud smirk was gone, replaced with panic and anger. He slammed his fist on the table. "You're lying. You cannot possibly own all of this. You are nothing without this family." But his voice cracked, betraying his fear. I stood taller, meeting his rage with calmness. "No, father. I am everything in spite of this family." Gasps filled the air. Some relatives shifted uncomfortably, others nodded silently, their respect clear in their eyes. Daniel finally found his voice, his words shaking. "You would not do this to us. You would not take away our home." I stepped closer, my eyes locked on his. "Would I not? For years, you all forced me to sleep in the shadows, treated me like a burden, laughed at my struggles. You banished me to silence. But today, I hold the keys not just to my future, but to yours." My mother's hand trembled as she clutched her napkin. "Jessica, please, this is madness." I let out a bitter laugh. "Madness? No. This is justice." Then, with deliberate calmness, I placed a single golden key on the table. The key to their own house. Gasps echoed again. "From now on," I said firmly, "every step you take in that house, every bill you pay, every light you switch on, it goes through me." The silence was heavy. Tears rolled down Emily's, no, Daniel's sister's cheeks. My mother covered her face, sobbing quietly. My father's shoulders slumped, his power shattered. I looked around the room, meeting every pair of eyes. You crowned Daniel the golden child. But while he drove your gifts, I built my own kingdom. You handed him a car. I own the ground you walk on. Relatives began murmuring, some looking at me with awe, others with guilt. The balance of power had shifted completely. For the first time in my life, I was no longer invisible. I was undeniable. The room was frozen. My parents stared at the papers, their world collapsing in front of them. Daniel sat pale and speechless, his once smug smile completely gone. For years, they had made me feel like I was less than nothing. For years, I carried the weight of their rejection, their favoritism, their cruel laughter. But at that moment, standing in the center of that crowded room, I realized something important. I was never less. They had simply been too blind to see my worth. I lifted my chin and spoke with a calm strength that filled the silence. You thought I needed your approval to succeed. But the truth is, your rejection was the very fuel that built me. You gave me nothing, and I turned it into everything. Relatives nodded in quiet respect. Some whispered to each other, "She is incredible." We never knew. I turned to my father one last time. You said I was ordinary. But now you will live every day under the roof of the daughter you dismissed. Tears stung my eyes, but I did not let them fall. I wanted them to see my strength, not my pain. I picked up my bag, straightened my shoulders, and walked to the door. As I opened it, I looked back once more. My voice was calm, but it carried the weight of everything I had endured. You gave Daniel all the love, all the pride, all the gifts. But remember this, while he drives the car you bought, I hold the keys to your future. And from now on, you will always walk in my shadow. The door closed behind me with a final, echoing thud. And with that, the chains of humiliation and neglect they had wrapped around me for years shattered into dust. Outside, the night air was cool and free. For the first time, I breathed not as the forgotten child, but as the woman who had taken her power back. Life does not always hand you love, respect, or recognition. Sometimes it gives you rejection, humiliation, and pain. But those very wounds can become the fire that drives you to greatness. So if anyone watching this has ever felt invisible, remember, your silence today might be the seed of tomorrow's empire. If this story moved you, do not forget to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories that will leave you speechless.